So here we are on a Friday afternoon. Pat McGarta has returned from a trip, not abroad, but a staycation, short staycation. Would that be the right word?
Short staycation, Jude. We stayed within the confines of our own little island, which was lovely. By the way,
Jude, is that the island of Ireland?
The island of Ireland, yes, correct, my boy. The unoccupied part. Anyway, we were down by what do you call it? Mullingar. And then we went down to Cork, Youghal, and then we went round by Kerry. We went round by West Cork into Kerry. You know, wow. Someone Jude. We don't have tourism up here at all. We have visitors. They have tourism. We went through Kenmare. It was like I don't know, Jude. It was bunged, and I mean bunged. And no, it was a fine day. I think it was Tuesday when we went through. But they had, because of the COVID thing, they had all these things out in the street. And all the way down one of the main thoroughfares, there wasn't even standing room for people, who were having meals. And like, Jude, it's a different world, a totally different world. And by the way, the nicest town I think I've ever been in my life is Bantry. And it's stunning. It's got that sort of almost continental feel. By the way, Jude, here's an observation, and I'm not going to go over all the things to talk about, but there's a different climate down south. You can feel the vegetation is different. That's you see right. Plants that you don't see. And now I'm from Donegal, and it's rugged, wild, and remote, and the weather up here is very different. But there's a totally, of course, it's the fact that maybe it's 300 miles further south, but it's so different. Yeah,
it was sort of a microclimate. I think it's something to do with the Gulf Stream or something like that. I haven't a clue, but there definitely is. It tends to be a bit milder, and I'd agree with you completely about Bantry and Clonakilty as well, which is quite close to. Both beautiful, beautiful places. The only negative thing I would say was at the time we stayed there, my God, you paid some price for everything, meals, accommodation. Wow, through the roof. That might have been because it was a half marathon was on. The place was crammed with people, And maybe
no, Jude, no. There were other places. When we were talking to people for accommodation, there was no negotiation. Either pay it or you don't. But there's plenty of people looking. Yeah. So in other places they were nearly sort of you were like a hostage if you were willing to come on at all. They put chains on your arms to come on ahead and you negotiate with them. Down there we were staying in a hotel and they offered us a price, and my wife says, "Is that the best you can do for us?" Yep.
Oh, really?
This is, by the way, September.
It's so un-Cork like that, Cork ones like to chat and
staycations has meant that the hotels are not there. The hotels were full, and I mean full. There was no. We in one place we got the last rooms for that night.
Wow! And was there much distancing when you went for breakfast or that kind of thing?
Yeah, but there was definitely a private party. We could hear a private party, and they were singing. They were Danny Boy and all the rest of it. And I am certain they were not social distancing. And one of the places where I'll not even bother naming it.
Anyway, you had a good time.
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay, let's get down to business here. We're going to look at what it says in the papers and the other media. All the media are covering this, but the Belfast Telegraph's headline is Donaldson gamble could well backfire. And that's referring, of course, to the gamble, which is he has said if by mid-October, late October, the protocol problem hasn't been fixed, the difficulties of the protocol. Now, he's not saying anymore that he wants it gone. He's saying he wants it to work and, not have holdups between Britain and the North of Ireland. In other words, UK should be an integral unit. So the Belfast Telegraph's a bit withering about him. It says, that he has reached for this nuclear option because he's afraid of an electoral meltdown. Would you agree with that, Pat?
I think there's an element of truth in it, Jude. I think it was you pointed out, but I've seen it myself. There was almost this sort of warning thing again, this threat thing. And it came across to me, unless we get our way, Jude, there was no thing there was no real trouble during the summer. There was no, I didn't notice anything heating up in temperature, but he was warning that the threat is there and so on about this protocol. And I was thinking, no, it's not. But you're deliberately bringing it back out to get your own way, because the TUV, there's no sort of, Jude, it seems to be in unionism, there's no sort of big reward for being moderate and being sort of having a common sense. Like Jim Allister has come from nowhere because of a hard line. And Jude, it's a joke. If the unionist people think Jim Allister is going to turn back the tide and bring us back to the 17th century, good for them, but it's not going to happen. Right. The reality is Northern Ireland has failed politically, socially, economically, religious ways. And the last thing, I think, talk about the gift that keeps on giving. Basically, Jeffrey's saying he's going to pull down institutions. Now, if I was a shinner, I'd be saying, oh, no, we're handing here. We want to make the institutions work. We want to do all the rest of it. But I see behind the scenes, I'd go, Jeffrey, go for it. And I'm deadly serious, because that's exactly what he's proven one more time. This place is ungovernable, and it's an artificial state, and it's never going to work.
And you have said the exact words that Mary Lou McDonald used on the lawns of Stormont last night during an interview. I didn't see that. She said something, well, Jeffrey, about 10 yards from her, and then she was standing behind the mic, and they were both on the lawn there. And she said, we want this institution to work. We want to serve people, etc. So you're right. I suspect that in private, Mary Lou McDonald and Sinn Féin and most nationalists would say, well, fair enough, guys, you want to go lopping your own limbs off, if you want to keep shooting yourself in the foot or even in other parts, that's fine with us. The Belfast Telegraph thinks it's because they have failed, he has failed, or they have failed, Jeffrey has failed to gain any meaningful alteration to the protocol using the methods he has used. So he's now reaching for the nuclear button and saying, well, those didn't work, this will work. And I'm not sure, it's in a way, he's tapping into something that many nationalists, I think Republicans fear, and that is that unionists, when they're in a corner, will certainly hint at violence or disorder, or maybe even something worse than that. And by saying I'm giving up on politics, essentially. I mean, you know what happens when you give up on politics. So it could be that he's aware of what he's doing, and he hopes that that he'll get his way without the thing following itself to the logical conclusion. I think that's what will happen. I don't think that he will collapse the thing. I don't think that he will, as he talked about, go to the polls or to an election at the end of October, because if he did, I think they'd be massacred. I think, despite his words, he can never out traditional unionist voice. He cannot TUV out TUV. No way.
Yeah, I agree, Jude. Look, I think we've been down this road before, but the DUP, they've brought so many things on themselves. It's not just one thing, and it's not just a protocol. There was the RHA, there was the Red Seals thing. There's Ian Paisley's little trips and other. In fact, the highest expenses at Westminster, there was disclosed, 200,000 again this for last year. And I think a lot of people are saying, right, that's the first part. The other thing, their incompetence in regard to the whole thing with Theresa May. They could have avoided sort of a border between, or not a border, but a sort of the protocol if they had played ball with Theresa May. They didn't. They thought, they saw their main chance. This is their chance to cut Northern Ireland off from the Republic and from Europe, and that interfering Europe. And we're going back to solidify ourselves as little Brits and so on. And they thought this was going to be the greatest thing going, that the nationalists could go screw. And it's worked out the exact opposite, that they have now got a protocol. And it's, by the way, and Dominic Cummings summed it up perfectly when somebody said to him, he says, I couldn't give, and the four-letter word he used, if they told Northern Ireland out in the middle of the Atlantic. They don't seem to have too many friends. It was little English nationalism, Jude, they didn't give a monkey's about Northern Ireland, Scotland, or Wales. It was the resurgent. We want freedom to make our own laws. We're not going to have the frogs and the crowds telling us what to do. And Northern Ireland and Scotland are all just collateral damage in that.
Yeah, I agree. I watched 2 programs last night. I watched Prime Time, which featured Jeffrey having an interview with Miriam O'Callaghan. And then I watched Newsnight. And Newsnight, like Prime Time, had 3 different items. But not in any of the items did Jeffrey feature, or unionism, or the protocol.
Yeah.
It didn't exist at that time. And in another one, maybe they might have done it. But I was certain that Jeffrey would feature on Prime Time. And I was pretty certain, and that suspicion was confirmed, that he would not be on Newsnight. That's on the mainland, as they say. Jeffrey doesn't exist. He doesn't exist.
No.
They've got him off. They've got them off their plate, and they're very happy to have him off their plate. And I don't think, despite what Boris may say from time to time, that there's going to be any change in that.
No. But Jude, here's a question for you. What do you make of? You see, Sir Jeffrey said he wanted unionism to buy into the DUP's position, and he wanted unity of purpose, and etc., and opposing the protocol. But Doug Beattie said, "We're not playing this game." He says, he says, I certainly won't be asking to take the team off the field in the middle of COVID and various other not constitutional issues. So much for already. So in other words, it's basically unionism starting to split in one way. Very simple. That DUP are going the TUV route, and Doug is taking the UUP, the alliance route, and there's a big cleavage down the middle.
That's right. And it's a different matter. You see, there was a time when sometimes the DUP would call for unionist unity coming up to an election. But that was when they were the big party. Now they're the 4th party. And if Jeffrey thinks that Doug Beattie or anybody else or Jim Allister is going to listen to him in any of the pleas that he makes as the 3rd most important, as according to this poll anyway, the 3rd most important unionist party, not a chance. They can't wait to finally get their knives into the DUP, which for so long has swaggered around the stage, brushing them aside as sort of.
I wasn't up to speed. I had to actually read about it this morning and last night. No, I was getting into them, but when you're traveling, you're getting out of cars and sitting in and whatever.
Yeah. Well, you're supposed to be in your holidays.
I was in my holidays, but I think I heard John Tong, professor, the guy, professor of politics at Liverpool, saying somewhere along the line, there's no value in moderation and unionism.
That's right.
I thought it was. Or sorry, I think it was no mileage in moderation. I think that was the term he used. I remember I said I must write that down. No, I didn't. But I think that's what he said. And I thought, that's a really good line, isn't it?
That's a good one. But don't forget now that the most immoderate man for years was Jim Allister, and he only had himself in the assembly. Yeah. So something extremely odd has happened. And the DUP has plunged from being easily the most important party in the entire state to being the 4th most important party in the state and the 3rd most important party.
I'm definitely repeating myself here, but hey, let's hark back to last year or thereabouts when Arlene was in her pump and when they were going in and out of 10 Downing Street and posing for the cameras with smirks on their face and the arrogance and what did you say, the hubris of we're the tail that is wagging this dog big time, and they love it.
Are we being too hard on them? Like you're saying, they were then swaggering hotly.
They were swaggering. They were swaggering.
I don't know. Was it a swagger? Now, were they not just quietly pleased that they were being,
Jude, they were not quietly pleased, and they were not. They were smirking and swaggering, and you could see it. And by the way, it's not just me saying it. Everybody was watching. They loved being on this. And what he called, remember Arlene's, we were going to put Boris on the naughty step. She was chatting about the Prime Minister. The arrogance of that statement when you think about it. Like she thought, we've got him where we want him. And, here was, about 2% of the population telling the other 98% we're the rulers here.
Well, on that Miriam O'Callaghan primetime show last night, she said, you're going to go pulling down the institution. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm simply going to do what Boris Johnson did. I'm going to seek a refreshed mandate from the people. And you mean, strictly speaking, he says, for example, when the Dáil closes for an election, you don't say the Dáil has been pulled down. And he has a point there, you know.
Oh, he has a point there. But hold on. But we know that's not the motivation here. You know, that's the spin. But the motivation is, Jude, the reason he is going for this and is purely it's about politics and the polls, not the protocol. It's definitely. Go ahead.
You don't think it'd be crazy though? I mean, do you really think? Well, this is the way I think about it. Trying to work out what is motivating him. The only thing I can think is maybe that he's saying, if I wait till May when this election takes place, my God, we'll be really slaughtered then. So, because we're not going to get this protocol shifted any further, and we'd better go now, and maybe people will be convinced that we're the sturdy party, etc.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing.
But it won't happen. I don't think he'll follow through on that. I really don't think he'll follow through.
But you're right.
I cannot see Jeffrey having an election.
But hold on. He's pulling the. By the way, I think Peter Robinson's prints are all over this, who was taught by Paisley, basically saying we are looking extremely weak now against the TUV. So here's the strategy. We go out and say, right, we are demanding that this be resolved to our satisfaction before the end of October. We're talking a matter of weeks, not months or years. We want this resort right, or else we go for an election. That the benefit of that, it's sending out the signal. We are not going to be kicked around. We're the strong party. We're standing up for you, as for unionism, etc., and so on. And he's out TUVing, to use your expression, the TUV. See if he sits back and doesn't do this, and that's come next May, he's going to get slaughtered. So it's basically from a position of weakness. He's trying to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, if you know what I mean.
Well, do you think that would you say that there may be an election next month?
Well, I could well be, but it's an okay. It's
or is he bluffing? Option. Or is he bluffing?
No, I'd say he has to go for something like this. Jude, if he waits till next May, he's gone. They're going to be forced.
I don't think an election can be called. It only can be called by the Secretary of State.
But if they pull out of this, then we're pulling out of all this, and things come down, right? And there's a fair chance of the Secretary of State. They can't have another 3 years of non-government.
No, you think the Secretary of State would give a green light to have an election?
Well, I'd say so, because at that stage, I would think he would have to give it serious consideration.
Well, I must say the image that keeps coming into my mind is, you know those old war films where you have a pilot of a fighter plane and it gets hit and you see it going down and he's wrestling with the controls, trying to get it to swivel and it's going down.
Yes, I think there's an element to Ginger, we're going in.
What do you think? Mayo, he used the name of Boris Johnson several times. Boris Johnson is in the limelight for his own reasons. It was on television. It was being talked about last night on Newsnight. He has pledged, of course, not to raise national insurance. That was one of his election pledges. And I must say the media, the ITV and BBC, both delighted in replaying again and again Boris saying, and here is national insurance. We will not raise national insurance level. And next thing, that's what he's done. Now, you might say, well, he has. He says he has broken an election pledge, but he says he's done it for the greater good because nobody could have seen a pandemic at that point. And, he's right.
Yeah,
I'd be tempted to give him a pass on this, because while he's definitely breaking an election pledge, on the other hand, it's extreme circumstances. It's like making an agreement and then something happens that changes everything. Like Scotland, for example, where they said this will be a once in a lifetime election, and then suddenly Brexit appeared, and clearly they said that totally alters things.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I thought me and you were going to have a row because I was going to give Boris a bye ball on this one as well for two reasons. Number one, I read somewhere that he said some people had said to him, why didn't you increase income tax rather than national insurance? He says because business wouldn't be paying up then. it's not like the Tories to look after just. But he says he says this is fair. Both business who are doing reasonably well, or which is doing reasonably well, and the individual both get hit with this. And he's also got the point. The experts, the health experts, said apparently because the nettle hasn't been grasped, apparently the NHS is down about 10 billion a year. This will raise 12 billion. It's also a sort of a social care package, so I don't know how much.
You see, that's the point, Pat. That's the point. It was put forward, this raise as this national insurance increase as a way of fixing social care, which is very topical at the moment because of COVID. And then it began to filter out. Actually, some guy said, this isn't a sum of money that is then lifted from the taxpayer and given to social insurance. I says, that's lifted from the taxpayer and is put into a big pot with everything else. And, social insurance might get a bit of that, but it's not their money.
Well, apparently it's going to be 12 billion a year, but Jude, here's the problem. One of the guys I was reading somewhere, I can't remember who said it, but apparently there's already 5 million on the waiting list for treatment in Britain. And they are scared, shitless, let's use the word, that apparently they reckon it could reach 13 million before the end of this COVID thing. Now, that's a massive waiting list and so on. And they said they're seriously underfunded and the queues are already getting quite considerable. And somebody had to do something, right? I'm not saying
it's fair enough then. Is he right then to address the bulk of that money towards the NHS?
I think he is to an extent, yeah. And,
politically smart,
you could argue, by the way, the social care thing, I don't think he deserves any medals for that because they're cutting the contributions to the less well off, So I don't think he deserves any medals for that. But I can see where there something has to give here. Like if they're heading towards 13 million people on a waiting list.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's leave that the sad tale of Boris and the even sadder tale of Jeffrey and move to things sporting. The Irish Examiner, among others, I mean, it's everywhere, has a headline that I found very amusing. It was, Liam Gallagher congratulates tennis star Emma Raducanu on US Open semi-final win. I didn't know that Liam Gallagher was a devotee of tennis, or that he would have played it against Noel during his junior years. And also, other people have weighed in. Piers Morgan has put out a text saying, wow. And apparently,
how profound is that? Yeah,
Well,
wow.
I'm there to have it. This is twice as good. Sorry, 3 times as good. Mark Austin, does that name ring a bell for you? Watch Sky?
Yeah, he's a Sky or BBC. I think
it's Sky News Presenter. I wouldn't know him, but it says Sky News Presenter, and he put out a tweet saying, wow. It's 3 wows for her. But Jesus, the fact of the matter is, she really, well, I think I despise those guys. I don't despise them, but I mean, they're not the first to try to hitch their wagon to somebody who's going places, Charlie Haughey and Stephen, what's his name?
Comes to mind.
Stephen, who was Stephen? Stephen,
Roach. Stephen Roach. Yeah, Stephen Roach, Tour de France winner, yeah.
For the benefit of our younger viewers, it was the Tour de France, and Charlie got over there like a flash. But anyway, these 3 guys starting again, but she does look like the real deal. I mean, first of all, not most important of all, but first thing on my list would be she's a very nice looking young woman, and that always helps. Some of the British stars in the past have been not bad tennis players, but they haven't been particularly attractive people. I'd include Andy Murray in that. Some people say that's good, gritty Scots quality. I always thought he looked miserable and sort of been eaten up inside and angry with himself. Whereas this one smiles, Emma Raducanu smiles, like puts her arms up. And
But isn't it unbelievable, by the way, when you hear wow, Shakespeare eat your heart out, eh? But anyway, let's move on. Raducanu, and I don't know a lot about her either, by the way. The thing about she's playing the Canadian girl Fernandez. Raducanu is 18, Fernandez is 19. Jesus, Jude, talk about a payday for an 18-year-old. But you had on something earlier on. I remember reading years ago one of these guys, the marketing guys. I think he's from the Mark McCormick agency, and he was talking about Rory McIlroy, and he said, "Here's the thing," he says, "Tiger Woods, he's this great guy and all the rest, but he says there's one thing about him: he's black." And he says, and this is fact. This is guy, and he was saying, he says that while he made serious, he says if Rory McIlroy, he says because number one, he says he's white, he's affable, he's got a personality, and and he says that package, he says he will, and Rory is already worth what, something like 200 or 300 million, and you're right, a lot of people don't want to talk about this, but they used to claim that what do you call it, a short, fat, bald man would never be president of America. Well, maybe Nixon proved that wrong, but you used to be, you used to have to be white, full head of hair, and a non-divorcee. That was so image. And remember Joe Kennedy said he would sell his sons like washing powder, or soap powder, as they called it, because it's all about image and all the rest of it. You could be a carbon cutout, but if you got the right image, it doesn't matter what's behind it.
But don't we get now, at least, whatever about the politicians, Rory McIlroy may be very wealthy, but he also was a very good golf player.
Yeah,
and
but you mentioned the point is this wee girl's got everything going for her. She could be a major star, and without question, she could.
Oh, she will. In fact, if you look at, all you have to do is look at and listen for a moment to Emma Raducanu, and she's so much more bubbly in life compared to her. Rory sounds rather downbeat, and Andy. What's his name?
Andy was morose.
Andy Murray was morose. So she's got a lot of things going, and she's also she hasn't dropped a single set.
Yeah.
Wow! Wow!
Wow! Make that 4 wows. But anyway, she's what is it? She has the first qualifier, male or female, ever to reach the final of a major tournament. Isn't that some achievement for a wee 18-year-old?
I would watch that. Right. When is it on? Is it on tonight?
Saturday, tomorrow. It's finals tomorrow.
I wonder what time.
I haven't a clue. Well, I guess Americans 5 hours behind us. So if it's about 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, it'll be about 2 o'clock. It'll be,
I'm doing a balance because there's a fairly important football game on.
I'm sure.
Before we get to that, have you noticed the performance of Leona Maguire?
Absolutely. Jude, do you realise, and it was a friend of mine, a fellow Charlie Collins, pointed out to me, Charlie's big into sport. He was a farmer guy at Highland Radio. That year, there was 24 players, and it's the Solheim Cup, obviously 12 from America and 12 from Europe. Mm-hmm. Leona Maguire was the only person on either team that played in all 5 matches. She's the only person who's unbeaten. She won 4.5 and half the 5th match. It's unbelievable what she did, and so on. So she's absolutely a star now. Jude, that wee girl, see that Solheim Cup from here on in, she is on a winner economically or financially. By the way, a friend of mine used to use this term. How can you monetize that? Well, she can monetize her performance in the unbeaten Solheim Cup, and she's only a young girl. It's fabulous.
She's 20. She's not that young. She's 26. 26. Certainly, it seems kind of old, almost middle age when you compare her with this Raducanu. But I find her very appealing. She's a nice looking young woman, but it showed you her in her hometown. And even before she went to her hometown, when she was talking to people at in Toledo, I think it was, there was something very appealingly modest and wholesome about her. She was just an ordinary, pleased, almost embarrassed young woman. I just thought it was great. She was a great advertisement for Ireland, I thought.
Right. Here's Dr. Collins. Here's a question for you. I want to get your reaction to this one. Do you think women's sports should be treated as seriously as the male sport?
Well, more and more. Funny now, I was out for a walk today and I was thinking that. But let me just finish this one point. And we'll come back to it. I promise I'll come back to it. If I don't, you shout and tell me. She has Leona has a twin sister, and I remember the 2 of them being identified when they were about 7 or 8. And I remember an item being on the news. Now her sister is Lisa, Maguire, and she's, I think, older by 15 minutes or younger by 15 minutes.
Yeah.
She actually was pretty impressive as well, and played as a professional golfer up until, I think it was 2018. And at that point, she retired from professional golf because her swing, she couldn't get the distance into her swing that would be needed, teeing off, would be needed if she was going to be seriously contending. And I was thinking, it must be, I kept thinking this, it must be hard for her, because there's your twin sister and she's done it and you sort of haven't. But, and she was never mentioned when they, the mother and the father and the grandmother were talking about her on TV.
I saw that.
So I sort of felt for a wee bit. The other thing is this, Pat, I really hope that this Leona Maguire goes from strength to strength and, becomes a huge international success. But I can't help thinking of Sonia O'Sullivan. Ireland's very good at producing people who nearly do it.
But hold on a second, Jude. No. I take your point, of course, but hey, Sonia, not only nearly, Sonia did. Sonia was cheated out of it. Jude, if the Chinese are watching, sue me. They out of nowhere came 3 Chinese athletes who were like metronomes, who ran around at the track, I think about 59 seconds every lap. The 3 of them stuck together. They disappeared, never heard of it again. Their coach was a guy who was known to be up to his eyeballs and very strange practices in regard to drug enhancing performances and so on.
Well, maybe Sonia
at that stage, Sonia most definitely was the best in the world. Sean Kelly was the best cyclist in the world for a long time. Stephen Roach won the Tour de France. So, we're a very small, we have what? In Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, there's 5 million people, but that's half the population.
I know we do very well, but you see,
add on 1.5 million from the north, and we still don't even make the size of London. Sometimes I think we undersell ourselves sometimes.
So I'm not for a moment underselling. I'm just saying that it's the hope that kills you, as they say.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is, when you're sitting watching there and you're going,
Olympic Games, and that guy that won the bronze medal, and then he jumps in the air and he hurts his foot. I remember I watched, I've forgotten what his name is now. There was a middle distance runner who was pretty damn good, who was from Dublin, and he came in 2nd or 3rd or something in the 1500 meters. And there's terrific hopes for Sonia. So again and again, for all sorts of good reasons. It doesn't happen, and I'm not terrified. I mean, she's done so well so far, so it doesn't really matter. But it'd be lovely to see her reach the kind of stature that Rory McIlroy has reached, because she, I believe, would have that innate quality of being ordinary and cheerful and nice. There's something very nice about the girl.
By the way, Eamon Coughlin's the guy you're talking about.
That's the guy I was thinking of. Yeah. But of course, Ronnie Delaney, who won.
Still alive.
And then he vanished. He sort of vanished. He
became managing director of one of the ferry companies.
He got a big job. Yeah. I think he's pretty religious. I think he may be involved in a lot of church stuff. But anyway. Yeah. Anyway. Let's hope the very best for Leona Maguire.
Right. So hold on. Right before you leave.
Okay. What was the other thing you were going to ask me?
The question. Another question is, what's this? The high profile of female sports this last while. And so on. By the way, the other day, the Republic of Ireland soccer players, male and female, will now be paid the same. Do you think that is either A, appropriate, or B, merited?
I think yes to both. What's more, I was thinking as I walked along today, just before this Zoom chat we're having, I was thinking, well, why stop there? Why are minor footballers not given the sort of attention and focus and floodlights that the senior team is given? Because, I mean, very often you can't help being age, under 18, but you're playing football to the best of your ability. So why are you being penalised? Why aren't you just seen as...
Hold on, Dr. Collins. I remember reading very clearly, one of the analysts, and I'm talking about 30 years ago, saying if the top male player played the top female player in tennis, she wouldn't get a point And he says, that's
no, I know she wouldn't, but
right,
that's not the point.
hold on. Right. See, after the Manchester United or Liverpool first team played, the ladies football team, their equivalent, they had won about 40-0 in the first half. So why are women? What's the deal that says women deserve the same pay, and when it's clearly they're not at the same level?
But you see, I wouldn't just confine it to women. I would say, well, why penalize them because they're women? Okay, they're not as good as, but I mean, to watch women's football, soccer is fantastic. We saw that with the Americans the time they won the World Cup, or was it the World Cup? Some of their players are really good, and I don't see any reason the fact that they're women and as a result don't have the sort of muscle and size and so on that men have. I don't see that should be used to penalize them. And what's more, I wouldn't penalize young people under the age of 18 who would be playing minor football. I think they should be paid. If you're going to be paying people, why not pay or give the same kind of spotlight attention to them? And on the other side, why not? There are, veteran teams. And I know in running, they have what they call these masters. What they mean is older guys. I think, if you saw a race between what was it, Sonia Sullivan and some other women of that vintage, I think people would be very interested in seeing that. Why should they be penalized? Why should they be penalized because you're old, because you're young, because you're a woman, any more than because you'd be black or
but is there not an argument? Surely the best should get the most, and surely in other words, hey Jude, if Liverpool, I'm just using a ridiculous example, but say the Liverpool first team now played the Liverpool ladies team, and they won. They were 40-0 up after about 25 minutes. Why should the women who are can't even score get paid the same as the guy on some other side who,
Well, I know.
Is that not an inversion of true worth?
You have a point in that the men's team would win if they played against them, but maybe you should be seeing them as parallel to it. For example, trying to think of if you had a chess game between some of these grand masters, right? And you say, they shouldn't be paid as much as, say, the Liverpool team. Well, why not? They're doing something slightly different. There's an argument to be had for saying, yes, pay them more, make the sport more popular, find ways of making it. I mean, there was a very good movie on Netflix. I forgot what the title was now. What was it? Queen's Gambit.
Brilliant.
And it was really, really interesting. So all I'm saying is difference doesn't mean necessarily that you should get paid less. If you stop to think about it in society, we don't say, well, we'll give this guy a smaller pension because he wasn't much good.
Yeah.
I hope not a state pension anyway. We say everybody's equal in that respect. They do their best, and that's all you ask of them.
By the way, Dr. Collins, I've just done to you what you've done to me on several occasions. So hard luck.
Oh God, I get you again. I didn't realize what you were doing there.
Right, now to the final thing.
Okay, the final thing.
Excuse me.
Oh, you're looking forward to this.
Dr. Collins, let me set this up for both our viewers.
All right, set it up.
You're in deep trouble. The wife is from Mayo and you're from Tyrone.
And I have a bolt on the inside of this door, and I can watch the game on this screen. Yes. Well,
right, come on, Jude. Who's going to win?
Okay, let me talk. Well, we're supposed to be talking about what it says in the papers and so on, different media. On Sky Sports site, it says the headline is Mayo versus Tyrone. Kieran Donaghy and Peter Canavan make their All-Ireland final predictions. Kieran Donaghy, of course, being a former Tyrone man, in the sense that his parents are from Tyrone. But he's the Kerry centre forward, and a very good one he was. And Peter Canavan, of course, who was a great Tyrone
legend.
So they give their predictions. And do you know what their predictions were? Donaghy said he thought it could well be a draw, an extra time, and still drawing, and he could see us having another day out. What did Peter Canavan say? I could see Mayo winning going into the closing stages, and I could see Tyrone coming back and snatching a draw. Did you ever see Spence sitting like that? Their backside must be full of splinters.
They'll be taking splinters out of their backsides for months.
Exactly. But anyway, will you watch the game, and then will you be cheering for Tyrone?
You know someone, I swear to you, I sat for years watching GA matches, and I sort of lost it a couple of years back when Dublin kept on winning. That's a fact. I just got pissed off and said the dice was loaded. Like, by the way, the Leinster final must be the most boring, predictable thing in history, because every year, is it 11 or 12 years in a row? Dublin, with a population, the greater Dublin area of what, 1.5 million or 1.7 million, up against places where they're by the way, they get 1.5 million or something from the GA every year based on population, or whatever it is, or 11 million or something. I can't even remember. But then there's places like Leitrim gets 150,000. You're going, this is ridiculous, and so on. Anyway, that's all aside.
Here's my point. Just my point in the last discussion.
Aye, but shut up. Anyway, so let's move on. I was that other night when Mayo were playing Dublin. I was out and I came in and I was about to turn on the match, and I discovered that Dublin were leading by 6 points at half time, and I said, bollocks, I'm not watching that. I just couldn't take it. That's a fact. I would love to see. And she talk about being annoyed when I discovered that Mayo had won. Oh, Jesus, Jude, I would have loved to have. And I'm really genuinely mean that. I would have sat and watched that all day long.
Well, I watched the second half myself. I watched the whole game, actually, and I was very glad. And my wife stopped watching it at half time, and then I was calling to her, they're doing better, Mayo's doing better. She said, I definitely couldn't come into the foot now, because it's the hope that kills you again, once you
absolutely.
They'd be terrified that they wouldn't win, but they did fantastic. I mean, it was amazing to crack Dublin after all those years. And it wasn't as if that Dublin team wasn't playing well in the first half. They were playing. I admired the Dublin team. I liked them a lot.
Actually, all I saw was the highlights of the game later on. But I could see in the first half, Dublin were bringing the ball.
Oh, they were very near their best there. Not quite as good as about their very best over the years, but they were very good. Anyway, it's going to be Mayo versus Tyrone. See, I can find reasons why Mayo would win, because after all, they beat Dublin. So if it's ever going to be the year for breaking the gypsies' curse, it's this year. On the other hand, you could say Tyrone was given not a chance against Kerry. Odds of, what was it, 7-1 or something against?
Something like that, I remember that.
And they beat them. They beat them, and they didn't even. I think some of their
Tyrone, like I don't know how can I put this. They have taken the dark arts of defending to a level that
come on.
Shut up! They're
sturdy.
Hey, come on.
That's why they're finished. What about? Do you not remember Gunnar Brady was hailed as a hero for Cavan, full back? He had forwards bouncing off him as they come out with the ball. So I mean, that's what backs do. That's what they're there for. We'll have to wrap this up. Who's going to win? Who's going to win?
I'm going to say this out loud.
Get off the fence.
I hope Mayo do. I know. I think what they have suffered. I really genuinely mean this. Their fans. They have been to so many All Ireland, and they've had so many, and they had so many great teams. And after Donegal, my second favourite team is Mayo.
Oh well, good sob story. Well, I hope, funny enough, Tyrone win, because they are in a new era. For so long, they had Mickey Hart, and they felt when they lost Mickey Hart and he was losing the winning touch, it was all over. Lo and behold, Brian Deher, one of the stars of the time of Mickey Hart, one of the stars of the Tyrone team, has come in, and he seems to know a thing or two about how to organize a team. So I'm saying this could be Tyrone Redux. Tyrone returns to the place that is rightfully theirs. And I want, last reason I want it is so that guy on the Sunday game, what's his name? Spillane, Pat Spillane. I want to see his face when Tyrone win the All-Ireland. Oh God, he can't stand Tyrone. And my only regret is that Jude Brawley isn't there to really stuff it into him. Okay.
On that note,
Okay.
Mayo.
Oh, Tyrone, Tyrone.